Hello there. Today we are going to talk about the electricity meltdown that is occurring in northwestern Europe and why Denmark is considering to go nuclear. So first we go to our friend Johan Christian Solid, founder and chairperson of the Danish pro-nuclear movement, and he gives us the news breaking: the Danish Conservative Party wants to lift the ban on nuclear power. It would make sense for us to include Danish-produced nuclear power in our energy mix at some point, says political leader of the Conservatives, Mona Juul. In Denmark, nuclear energy is prohibited under paragraph 11 of the Electricity Supply Act. Additionally, in 1985, the Danish parliament has passed a resolution excluding nuclear energy from energy planning. More than three political parties in Denmark are currently pushing to lift the ban on nuclear power. Now here's the news. It comes to us from Berlingske. I don't know what kind of a newspaper this is, but they have a couple of interesting quotes. I understand that it can be difficult. We have been told how dangerous nuclear power is, but the technology has developed, and we have to focus on something other than fossil fuels, she tells the newspaper. If wind and solar are enough, then bring it on. Super duper. But I have a hard time seeing the scam in the fact that we just keep a certain technology out, she says. This is very important, keeping it out. And this is something that has been, if you look at how successful the Greens and some of these left-leaning parties were in keeping nuclear energy off the table, it's just horrendous. What is happening right now is a watershed moment for nuclear. Nuclear's acceptance is basically at an all-time high in northwestern Europe. And it's no surprise because everybody's eyes is now slowly being opened. Now, this is the whole problem because, the center left, mainly the left, the Green parties, they've managed to create this fable that renewables are going to power Europe, right? And in the meanwhile, they've kept demonizing nuclear, making sure that everybody is mortally afraid of it, or everybody, as many people as possible. So what we did was, and this is, we have to dig a little bit into the history here, right? If we look at nuclear from the late 90s to early 2000s into 2010, we came of an era where the OPEC crisis became less and less relevant, right? The OPEC crisis created the best nuclear program in the world, which was the French Mesmer plan. The French basically built enough nuclear to satiate 70% of their electricity demand. It was the best program ever. It showed that you can do nuclear reasonably cheap, affordable, reasonably fast. Then we get the 90s. Basically, what happens is we're not that much fussed about climate change yet. Everybody is just building coal plants and gas plants. And so what happens is Schröder comes to power in Germany in 2000. He basically cuts a deal with the Greens. He says, I'm going to close the nuclear power plants, but you have to give me the opportunity to import a lot of Russian gas because I want to build a lot of gas plants in Germany. And these gas plants are going to keep the lights on when the wind isn't there and the sun isn't there. That was the trade. So what you get is that Germany is exiting nuclear. Other countries basically, they are fine. They have their coal plants, they have their gas plants, some oil plants even. Then all of a sudden, people start getting anxious about climate change. We need to do something else. We need to start decarbonizing. We have to shut down our coal plants. We have to shut down our gas plants. But everybody agrees those gas plants can come later. It's cleaner than coal. Doesn't emit as many CO2 emissions as the other things. And all the plants that were being made for new nuclear in the 2000s, all of them got scrapped. Except for Hinkley Point C, except for Flamanville and Olkiluoto. Those were plants that were conceived in the early 2000s, 2005-ish, around that time. So these are really old projects already. We're talking about 20 years ago. But still, we didn't really think that we needed a lot of nuclear at that time. We thought, okay, at some point we're going to build so many renewables, everything is going to be fine. So nuclear was being kept off the table. It was too expensive. We had gas and we had ultra cheap renewables, and we had these fantastic charts, ever dropping renewable prices. Solar was getting cheaper each year. It was on an exponential decline. The same could be said for wind. Oh, we are becoming so good at building these windmills. The LCOE is so low, nothing can ever compete with it. At one point, the only thing we are going to build is wind and solar. That was the idea. So at that point, basically, what you get is this perfect anti-nuclear storm. Even the right-wing political parties, they're not much fussed by nuclear. They're not much fussed by renewables either. They know they have their gas, their natural gas. They know that they have their coal plants, and there's not much pressure yet. Then in the 2010s, the pressure starts building up. You get these national plans to build a lot of renewables everywhere. The Dutch government, they decide that they want to build 70 gigawatts, 70 gigawatts of offshore wind. And Europe even says, okay, we want to build 300 gigawatts of offshore wind in the Northern Sea. And at some point, I was already writing about energy. And I was already saying that this was lunacy, that we really were discounting nuclear at our own peril, and that we really needed to consider building more nuclear, and that we didn't have to stare ourselves blind on Hinkley Point C and on Olkiluoto and on Flamanville, but that it was possible to do nuclear cheaply and fast if we really committed to it. So now we are roughly 10 years, let's say 8 years on from this moment where everybody was basically claiming the North Sea to become the electricity hub of the world, basically. And now what you see with these doldrums in Germany, this completely failed transition in Germany. The Netherlands is still trying to do the transition, but it's going to fail here as well. And it's also failing in Denmark. Sweden has already acknowledged what was going on, and they have basically taken a step back and said, okay, we're going to build 10 gigawatts of new nuclear power. They were smart. They were actually thinking, what should we do? Poland isn't as fortunate. They don't have a lot of sea where they can put a lot of windmills. So they came to the natural conclusion that nuclear was going to be their way out of coal. But what she says, that it is a scam to keep nuclear off the table, that's absolutely right. And I really think that she is onto something here. So that's something that I really hope that a lot of these countries, get into their head, that they realize at some point, listen, we have been sent down a path that does not lead to salvation. That's basically it. The UK still needs to figure this out. The Netherlands still needs to figure this out. Germany simply deserves a smack in the face. Wake up, Germany. Some salt underneath their nose. What is that? Smelling salt or something? I don't know what it is. A bucket of water in their face with some ice cubes in there. Denmark, same situation. Denmark needs to grow up too. And there's Spain as well. We see the awakening in Italy at this moment. Italy is awake. They have opened their eyes. They realize, damn, we've been fooled. So back to Denmark, right? Denmark is pretty interesting. So the energy mix, right? The energy mix. And we're talking about electricity today. 7% coal, 0.1% hydro, then there's, I don't know how much natural gas that is. Let's see if coal is 2.5 terawatt hours and gas is 1, then gas is 2.5, 3%, biofuel 16.2. Think about this very well, because I'm going to show you what biofuels really means in Denmark. Then we get waste. We get a lot of wind, 75% of wind, and then we get 10% of solar PV. So it looks like they are there, right? They have done the worst part of the transition deal. They've built all the wind that they need. Now, what these people fail to recognize is that if you have a certain amount of demand, right? Let's say that this demand is 10 gigawatts. And let's say that you want to make sure that this 10 gigawatts of demand gets fulfilled. Then it's not enough to build 10 gigawatts of renewables. Because these renewables, you have this capacity factor problem. Capacity factor of solar in Denmark is probably somewhere around 10%. The capacity factor of offshore wind in Denmark will be between 50% and 55% if they're lucky. And the onshore wind capacity factors are probably like 35%. Now, what does this mean? This is a bit tricky to explain, but I'm going to try it in any case. So the capacity factor for solar is influenced first of all by the day and night cycle. When the sun is gone, there's no solar energy. It's that simple. So if you put it on a graph, you get a graph that's like, it looks a little bit like a parabola. And then a cloud comes in. So instead of going up, it's cloudy. Now it stays down. You only get a little bit of solar irradiance, and the panels only work for like a couple percent. Then wind is even worse. Wind is seasonal, but it's not a nice graph. It's not like you get, now you got a nice windy season, and now you've got a season with less wind. So during the summer, your wind production goes down. During the winter, your wind production goes down. Still, you have a lot of very windy days, especially during the winter time. When the winter storms come, the low pressure systems blow in, and you get loads and loads of wind and rain and snow. Fantastic weather for wind farms, right? But then you get the doldrums, basically meaning that there's no wind at all for days on end, sometimes even for weeks, multiple weeks. We had a doldrum of about 2 weeks at the beginning of December. We also had a doldrum in November. So we already had 2 doldrums this year, this winter, this autumn and winter. And this means that at those moments, wind is gone and solar is gone. So if you have your 10 gigawatts, what we're talking about, something else has to produce the 10 gigawatts, otherwise the lights will go out. If your demand exceeds the capacity to produce, you don't have any lights anymore. It's that basic. So what you do is you build enough gas plants, you keep some of your coal plants, and you keep some of your biomass plants, and some of your oil plants, and you keep them spinning. You don't produce electricity at that moment, but you keep them spinning. You make sure that they're ready to produce power at a moment's notice. When the sun goes down, when there's whatever, when there's an eclipse, or when there's a heavy rain cloud coming into the country, while there's a lot of demand. So you need this secondary infrastructure. These spinning wheel generators, to make sure that you can produce electricity while the solar and the wind isn't there. Now, the solution, according to a lot of these super intelligent system modelers and people who produce these plans, these national plans, is that instead of building 10 gigawatts of wind and solar, what you're now going to do is you're going to build 30 gigawatts of wind and solar. And you keep 10 gigawatts of gas plants. Let's say it's 6 gigawatts of gas plants and 4 gigawatts of batteries. It's always some kind of mix that looks like that. So what you're going to do with the 20 gigawatts of wind and solar that is being produced while you're using 10, is you build electrolyzers somewhere. I don't know where. You make sure that they can get 20 gigawatts in there, which is going to be an additional problem because you need to expand your transmission and distribution network to such an extent that they can actually absorb this 20 gigawatts of extra capacity that is being put onto this grid. and move that towards those electrolyzers. Now, ideally, you put the electrolyzers, at strategic points so that you don't have to put as much transmission and distribution network in there. You build your gas plants right next to those electrolyzers, and that's how you optimize for this fantasy. And that's what everybody is trying to do. Germany is trying to do this. The Netherlands wants to do this. Denmark wants to do this. These are the three worst countries in Northwestern Europe when it comes to transitionalism, electricity systems, trying to transition to something that is inherently inefficient. You build a triple system. In order to make sure that you can do this, you have to build this. If you would do it with nuclear, if you had 10 gigawatts of demand, what you would do is you would build 13 gigawatts of nuclear, simply because you have to account for the fact that sometimes these plants go out because they will go on maintenance or they will have to go on refueling. So you overdimension it a little bit, right? You overdimension it a little bit. Suppose that you're living in a black box. You don't have any inputs or outputs. 10 gigawatts demand would basically necessitate building 14 gigawatts of supply. That's how it works. So 10 gigawatts of demand and 14 gigawatts of supply in a nuclear system versus 10 gigawatts of demand and 30 gigawatts of wind and solar and 14 gigawatts of gas and another 20 gigawatts of electrolyzers. And do you see the problem? Do you see what is going on here? What these people, this is a hugely inefficient plan that everybody's trying to foist on us. So let's look at how inefficient this looks. So this is a map. Over here you see placeholders with figures in there. This is basically showing us, the distribution of the windmills in Denmark. So if I see over here 91 and I click on it, then you get to see this array of 91 windmills that are built off the shore in the west of Denmark. So these are their offshore wind farms in the North Sea at this moment. Then you have the Kattegat over here. As you can see, there's also some wind generators over here. Not wind generators, wind harvesters. They don't generate anything. That's an island, so that's not offshore wind. This is offshore wind, right? But you can see there's a shed load of offshore wind built in Denmark. There's also a shed load of onshore wind built in Denmark. They really like their wind, but they are now slowly but surely realizing that it is becoming a failure. So over here, this is a map that I created myself. What I want to do is I want to show you the extent of the wind industry in Denmark and how it is powered. So over here we have Esbjerg, right? Esbjerg is basically the main wind industry hub of Denmark. So if we look over here, what you can see if we zoom in, we see all these wind turbines being parked over here. These are these pylons. Here are the ships that are carrying the pylons and the components, Then over here you have the nacelles. Nacelle is the thing that sits on top of the pylon that holds all the electrical equipment, to which also the wind blades are attached. So this is quite an energy intensive industry. You need these ships. These ships run on bunker fuel. They have to go out onto the sea and install all this stuff. And here's the irony. So as you can see over here, this black spot over here, that's coal. This thing over here is a conveyor belt. It scoops up the coal, brings it up over the conveyor belt into this building over here, right? This building over here. The conveyor belt keeps running, and then drops it into here, and then it ends up in this building. This building is a coal boiler. It's simply a large room with a pile of coal in there that's burning, with some air being blown into there because you want to heat it up more and more and more. If you blow into your coals when you're barbecuing, it becomes hotter. So they are blowing air into this boiler room with these coals that are burning. Surrounding this boiler room are water pipes, and through these pipes runs water, which turns to steam, and they reheat it a couple of times And that's how you get supercritical steam. And this supercritical steam gets turned into electricity in this turbine building over here. So there's turbines, there's a shaft running through these turbines, and this rotational energy then ends up in a generator box where there's a lot of copper spools and perhaps some permanent magnets, and the turning of these spools and these magnets then generates electrical fields, and these electrical fields are used by all of this industry over here to make these wind turbine blades and these pylons and these nacelles, which is basically steel manufacturing, and these blades that's it's basically a load of composites that they're sticking together. So this is the first site that they have in Denmark where a lot of wind activity is, and the next site is over here. It's Kalundborg. Well, is it over here? No, it's not. I need to go to Aalborg. Right, this is it. Here's where I believe Siemens is. Right, Siemens Gamesa. So this over here, you can see the turbine blades are coming out of this building, out of these buildings over here. These are the buildings where the turbine blades are made. They are being parked everywhere, as you can see. There's also, I believe there's no pylons here. Oh, yes, there is. So pylon production is over here as well, which is basically, folding steel, making sure that you get a circular steel ring. You've got a lot of welding to do. So this is also pretty electricity dependent work that needs to be done over here. You have the monopiles and the pads onto which these wind turbines are installed. And the irony is that the electricity comes from here. It's just another coal plant, as you can see. So yeah, the scam is real. Many people don't like it when I say it, but I really have come to dislike wind, especially for the fact that it's such an inefficient, highly energy intense industry, and we're basically pulling the rug over everybody's eyes. What you see over here, all these placeholders here, all of those placeholders are power plants. Some of these power plants are pretty small, and they also are used to create district heat in Denmark, right? I mean, most of these are just district heating. Most of these, by the way, are also biomass powered, as you can see over here. Biomass basically means wood pulp, wood pellets, wood chips. So these are just modernized wood ovens. That's basically it. Let's see. There was another one that I wanted to show you. It's over here. So Kalundborg, right? This is a combined plant. This one does multiple things. They use, as you can see, they use biomass again. But it's also, I believe that they can also run on oil. They spray the oil into this boiler room and then they ignite it. That's how it's done. You can see these oil drums over here clearly. And then there's also a hyper-modern one near Copenhagen. Let's see, in the south of Copenhagen, it's over here. This is a hyper-modern one, but it runs on coal, it runs on biomass, it runs on, perhaps gas or oil if they needed to, as you can see over here, these things over here. Yeah. But it's also possible that these are drums that store heated water, because there's always a district heating system attached to it. So Denmark, can they use nuclear power? I hope they surely can. I mean, at least this portion over here should be replaced with nuclear. The coal, the hydro you can't, but the coal, the gas, the biofuels, and the waste. Well, the waste, maybe you can do something differently with the waste. Maybe you can sequester the carbon dioxide that comes from that. But in any case, the biofuels and the coal, at least that you can replace with nuclear. And you could also replace a part of the wind with nuclear. That would make the system more efficient. It would be smarter to do. So I believe that the conservatives of Denmark, they're onto something. I really support their fight to get the nuclear ban lifted in Denmark, and I really hope that they, at some point, they come to their senses and they realize that they have to start a nuclear program in Denmark, build some SMRs, perhaps a couple of AP1000s or perhaps a couple of EPRs. In any case, everybody needs a slap in the face. Denmark, the Netherlands, Germany, especially Germany and Austria as well. By the way, Austria is one of the worst countries when we're talking about anti-nuclear sentiments and leaving ourselves open to whatever havoc that gas can wreak on our economies. So yes, I am very anti-gas. If you haven't noticed this, I don't like buying gas from Russia, so I hope that we don't ever do it again. Buying gas from Norway is fine. Buying gas from, Saudi Arabia or Algeria, that's even better than buying gas from Putin. I just don't want it. As a European, I believe that that's really inviting a lot of dangerous stuff that we should not be involved with. Nuclear is the only option to make sure that we keep an EU economy up and running in Germany, in the Netherlands, in Denmark, in Sweden, in Norway, in Finland, France, Spain, Italy, the Balkans. I don't know which countries are member of the EU over there. But in any case, nuclear is the answer. Wind and solar are not. Wake up, Europe. And with that, you reach the end of this video. If you want to support me, please make sure that you subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment down below. And if you want to support me financially, please go to my Patreon page and become a paying member or become a member of the channel on YouTube. Thank you all for watching, and may the strong force be with you. Bye-bye.